Mr. Bernstein, take it away. You're on mute.
Hey everybody, it's Tinderbox Meetup. It's Saturday, July 13th. I'm Mark Bernstein, the designer of Tinderbox. We're celebrating that Tinderbox 10 is actually out now. So if you haven't already, head over to the Tinderbox website and grab Tinderbox 10. Dirigibles. Okay, and here's Michael Becker.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Tinderbox Meetup. The format for the meetup is we go around the room and we have new people introduce themselves. We then go in and we talk about any projects, concepts that people are working on. If we have a particular theme, we dig into that. We don't have a formal theme, but I would like to throw out an informal theme of what's new in Tinderbox 10. So perhaps we can have Mr. Bernstein, Anderson, and myself do a brief dialogue about what's new in Tinderbox 10, and it's a lot. So let's put that on the agenda and highlight that a little bit. I'd like to have one other agenda item in that I have a series of explode exercises I'd like to walk through with you, Mark. Both Marks actually. Mr. Anderson was helping me with it last week, but I'm still conceptually stuck, and I want to demonstrate where I'm stuck and have people give me some feedback on that. Other than that, does anybody else have any comments, projects they're working on that they'd like us to talk about today?
I would ask at some point in the future, a revisit for what you did last week at a slightly slower pace.
Okay, and remind me, what did I do last week?
That was Tinderbox word workflow.
Yeah, we were doing that together. Like he was teaching me as we were doing that.
How about from Mary's perspective?
Yeah, the word. Okay, the word to. Well, and actually, my question follows on with that today. So let's definitely talk about that. Yeah, we can do that again for sure. Anybody else? I think Jeremy is new-ish. I don't know Jeremy well enough to recognize his face. Jeremy, you want to introduce yourself or remind me?
Yeah, we have actually talked a few times, if you remember, but maybe about a year ago. I've been distracted by other shiny objects, but excited by version 10, and I just happened to notice it 5 minutes before the meeting started, so I'm here.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start with that agenda then. Let's jump into what's new in version 10. I think the biggest thing that's new is a new view, the Gaudi view. And there are some other little elements. So kind of Mark Anderson, since you've been documenting that, you want to give us a kind of quick rundown of the features and brief descriptions?
Well, yeah, I mean the main thing, and I think the tentpole to the release has been the Gaudi view, which if you're sitting there thinking, if you're old enough to remember the days when you looked at the list in the upgrade, thing and saying, do I pay or not? Which the world has moved on from that, thankfully. So it's a big amount of work. Mark has put a ton of work into this to make a really interesting view. The point about it, perhaps, that may pass most of us by, because we're just saying, hey, how do I get my results? I think is an interesting part is the packing, the density packing that it gives. So the idea is that basically birds of a feather cluster together, and sticking with Tinderbox's sort of approach of offering you multiple view specs of the same thing. So it's all the same data, just as with a map or an outline. It's just another way of looking at your data. Gaudi, like table view, works off a container, so it's looking at the contents of a container, and is certainly not designed to sort of put the whole of the world in, mainly because there's an awful lot of computation and a limited amount of space. So realistically, sweet spot is probably about 50 items. You could probably get up to about 200, and beyond that, well, how powerful is your machine and how frustrated you want to get. This is not, which is not a reflection on the view, but rather than us using it, being realistic about what we can get out from things. I don't know if anyone's, I'll put it up because I'll just put something up, share a screen, because some people may not yet have seen it. So bear with me a moment. Share a screen. Oops. It would help if I put the thing I wanted to show on the screen. And
just use your AI search and it will magically appear.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and if you don't know, ask Matron and she'll tell you. Yes, I'm getting there. Right. Sorry, apologies. I'm old and I forget stuff. Right. Hopefully you can see something on screen anyway. So this view, this picture here, is what Gaudi view looks like. It's also I've done it because it's a new major version of Tinderbox. I've done a new baseline of ATB ref. The main thing that means is if you're used to seeing, in version X point, Y point, Z, something was added, all that's scraped away. So we're starting afresh with 10. So all those little things have now been hopefully rolled up. So here is the Gaudi view, and it might look unusual because the sort of shapes are all a bit odd. And Mark will probably either frown heavily when I say this, but it's partly based on the what I think you call the Voronoi view. But basically, it gives you very dense packing. And there's all sorts of cleverness he's had to work in to actually, it's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing to have a working idea. And so what you can, the screenshot that's on screen at the moment, I think gives a fairly good view of things. So you will see the name of the note, or in fact, the display name of the note, which will try and wrap inside the shape that's in. You'll notice some of the things have a tick, which is the badge, so you can shape badges, and you'll notice some of the things are colored, so $color is there, and I think probably pattern and one or two other things work. But again, the idea is not to go bonkers and have too much. You don't want too much color. What this is essentially trying to let you do is find things that have a similarity, cluster in a way that gives you an indication that you might not have considered that there is a similarity. And the way it works is in the picture, there's a box at the top called force. Force is written as a query, and the query in this case is saying, basically, are any of my authors shared with any other notes authors, or are any of my tags shared with another notes tags? So it's quite simple. I mean, we can, if people want, we can dive into sort of queries and query language, but it's as simple as that underneath. And don't worry if you are confused by the queries. Just come to the forum and say what it is you're trying to query, and I'm sure folks in the forum will be able to help to make sense of that. The other interesting thing it raises is, of course, is you can't find stuff that isn't there. So if you find yourself trying to ask a question based on attributes you don't have, this is Mother Nature saying, okay, you've got a little homework to do before you start up. But when you have, we now have another really interesting view. It has quite dense packing. Essentially, you'll see there are some things that look almost hexagonal, which is about the most dense packing. That's the most dense packing you can get. Thanks again, Nature. That we have. So essentially that's what's happening. As you crush more in, you'll find things may shape. But what you should find, and which may not, again, don't be deceived by the colors and the badges and stuff, because that's just information already assigned by you, because it's your information. What the Gaudi view may show you is that there is an affinity, essentially, that you either did or didn't recognize because a whole lot of notes have clustered together. So it's quite an elegant thing. It may seem really small, and not everyone needs it, and that's fine. If you don't need it, you don't have to use it. But I know that behind the scenes, an awful lot of work went into making something just work, and it's a rather really nice addition to Tinderbox in terms of this ability to have multiple views of the same data. Some other things have been brought in is that Tinderbox is able to reach in and use the icon system that is essentially built into current Mac systems. There is an app you can download if you want to know all these things.
And I'll show people that in just a minute when you're done.
And there are some limits to what it can do, and Michael probably push on that. Something else that got played about in the run up to version 10, and I suspect we probably haven't played with too much as yet, is the ability to put expressions and sort of actions and things inside. So people wanted things like they wanted tick boxes. Somebody else to have tick boxes inside text of a note. It's fine. If you don't want it, you don't need it. If you want it, you really want it. But being able to put expressions so that, and this probably in a way for some people might sort of be on the same axis as something like Jupyter Notebooks. So you've got interactive code in a note that you can evaluate to get an output out of. It's interesting and it's experimental at this point, partly because I think it's now up to us as the community to go away and do interesting things with it. I genuinely can't remember, and it wasn't me this time who asked for this, but somebody did, and it's here. And it's something I've got on my sort of jotted to try with more. All the stuff that's new in Tinderbox 10, bear with me a second, is probably most easily found if you go into ATBRF, go to the changelog, and it's all linked. It's all linked here. So you can have a wander through this. Bill, you got a hand up, sir.
Yeah, I have no doubt that this is a very valuable feature for what I'll call a range of data. And it just something that is funny to me and I want to share because it's funny is when you go outside that range. So I, saw this Gaudi view and I've changed my approach from using containers to using links to show connections. So I've got a container that's got lots and lots of data. And I was going to share my screen. I can't right now, but I can just tell you that I have globs of little round balls and colors going through. And it's a very nice mosaic that it is totally useless for gleaning any kind of information. So when I tried this Gaudi view, I just laughed because it was for my particular scenario, it's useless, but pretty. So again, Mark, I have no doubt that this is very useful for the right range of data. But maybe Mark Anderson, if you stop sharing, I can share my screen.
Sorry, yes, I apologize. Yeah, let's stop. There you go. Yeah. And while you're doing that, as I said, I just repeat, I mean, it really is, there is this sort of thing that,
oh my.
FOMO, fear of missing out. But Bill, part of that is just that the packing size is such. Now, if you were to play with the view size on that, you would probably find. But I take the wider point. The thing is not to worry. This is such a big toolbox that there is a tendency. If I'm not using it, I'm not getting something out of it. But it doesn't. For instance, none of this stops you. I think that's overlooked is what you might possibly do is you could use an agent to say, find 40, 50 notes. You think you have a spidey sense that have some relationship.
Oh yeah,
you can make a Gaudi view of that and use that. And again, what it's mainly doing is it's showing you the affinity. Now, if the affinity is really only shown to you by the Gaudi view and you want to do something with that affinity, then obviously you'll use existing tools and things like attribute values or something to actually make that more concrete so that you can go and use it in other ways, if that makes sense.
Yes, it totally does. I just really wanted to share that because it made me laugh.
Yeah. I have similarly produced things where I thought, well, that's interesting, but I don't think I'll use it.
Yeah.
But no, I would encourage people to experiment with it. And if you get stuck, do ask. It's probably useful if you have a bit of data or maybe a little specimen file so that people can basically take your file, put something into it and show it back to you, which is often the easiest way of getting around that log jam of saying, I know what I want, but I can't create it. Dave.
Who put up that incredibly ugly?
I did.
Please put it back. I got to get a screenshot. I mean, that's, come on, background. That's got to be wallpaper, please.
So,
oh, it's got that's one of the ugliest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
well,
but it's visually ugly, but it's beautifully dense. And if you actually look, it's probably something good.
If you know where what you're looking for is, you can get muscle memory will take you there. That's the disgusting thing about humans.
Well, this is too much. But the reason, when I made this, it made me wonder: am I using Tinderbox correct in the best way? Because I used to have all of my daily experiments in their own containers, and I'm visually. I think of myself as more visually oriented, and I like having a big desktop with all my different experiments all on the same page. And I organize them by links, what box is connected to another rather than by containers. So I've got this massive, this is years of data in one map. And the brown is synthesis and the light blue is planning, and there's stuff in here, but there's
I should probably make, if I may just interrupt for a second, I should probably make plain to people who are not used to Gaudi View, the colors you're seeing in between the sort of the little note blobs are actually links, and these are colored links. So we've got light blue links, dark blue links, brown links, and I assume that Bill's colored these by link type, which is something again that you're able to do. So by default, all links are black in color, but you can make different link types, different colors, and that can be useful. I think, in fairness, I don't think Gaudi View as intended, and I know Mark will give me a better description of this than I'm about to give, but it's not trying to work off links. If you want to work off links, I absolutely encourage you to look at hyperbolic view. Again, it's something it might take a while to get your head around, but the whole point of hyperbolic view is it only shows you what is linked from things. So it allows you, and because you can filter by link type, for instance, you can look at across all your experiments, and you can say, how are these things interconnected by a link type I've chosen, type X, whatever. And again, I think this is the beauty, that it steps beyond this paradigm where we all think we're now encouraged to think that my task is to tip, or fill the bucket with all my crap, press the button, and lo and behold, AI springs to the fore and said the answer is 42, which it may well be, and we are none the wiser for it. So all these really interesting tools that are there in Tinderbox allow us to take a different angle on this. So I think in Bill's case, you definitely want to have a play with hyperbolic view, and as ever, if it doesn't make sense, just ask in the forum, and we can walk through today's time. Mark, please take over.
Yeah. No, I think this is all good. Looking at, starting from where we begin with Gaudi View, the question is, can we get something that has some of the virtues of the Tinderbox map view, but fits more notes onto a screen, or a small scrollable screen, than we can really get into map view? It turns out, even on my fairly humongous screen, you can only get about 80 notes at a glance without map view getting really, really crowded and hard to use. And Gaudi View can, as you see, it uses just about every pixel for notes. And the links are drawn in these little spaces called grout, whose width you can adjust in between the notes. And Notes expands, they have roughly similar amounts of screen space apiece, subject to various constraints. Given the constraints of today's screens, which are now pretty much the constraints of today's eyes, you can get a couple of hundred notes into your field of view. That's about the place where currently Gaudi View also runs out of computational steam and has trouble keeping up with the changes as you move things around. So while that's an accident, but it's a happy accident. There's my stop share. The other thing that the other thing that there's Tinderbox X share. Here we go. We have added an expression, which we do by going up to the edit menu, insert. While the text is selected, we go up to edit, insert expression, and we get a box. We click there, we say, and that inserts this sort of expression box in the text. Pardon my lack of typing proficiency. I add a new child, then these get updated. Also, here's an example of one of the new badges. There are about 5,000 of these. They're built into your system, so they come nearly free. One thing I did want to point out is there's badge and badge size. Badge size, properly capitalized, is normally 16, and often I find that's a little bit small for map views, so you can change that to 32 or even larger. The new icons in their names are prefixed with SF, meaning San Francisco, the Apple font family. But you're never going to remember 5,000 icon names. So the badge picker now has a search command, and if you search for something like time, you will get a variety of icons.
So Mark, real quick. So is that actually searching the SF Badge app? So you don't actually need to download the SF Badge app?
Well, it's searching the data behind the app. So
got it.
That's correct. You don't,
okay.
And it won't confuse you by showing you things for a newer operating system than you currently have.
Got it. Okay. And then my other question I have on that one, is it possible to, because in the SF Badge app, you can kind of color code them. So is it possible to actually do a color coding on these?
Not currently.
All right. If we can put that on the spike, that would be awesome, because for a visual distinction, being able to color code like a time badge, red, green, yellow would be really useful.
Right.
All right. Awesome. And then the one other thing while you're at it, can you show the checkbox? We've now got in text checkboxing now.
Same thing, insert checkbox.
We're not seeing your menu when you do that, by the way. These are just
right. I'm sorry. It's edit insert checkbox and edit insert expression. The checkbox you click and it unclicks the value of all of the checkboxes that happen to be in the text of a note or the note's checkboxes attribute. So you can have actions that ask, are all of the boxes in this note checked, or none of the boxes of this note checked, or even are a majority of the boxes in this note checked.
And I'm sorry, you said there's action code for that?
Yeah, it's text. It's sorry, just check boxes.
I don't remember seeing that. Can we pull Mark Anderson? Can we pull that up in ATB Ref so we can just get a reference to that?
I've just actually, funnily enough, just posted a link to it, and I'm just about to put one for the for expressions.
Got it.
Sorry, yeah, I fat fingered the text,
okay.
But
and then Mr. Anderson, well, you've got, or Mr. Bernstein, well, you've got it shared. Can you also show like the new feature for splitting the note name using the enter key? I think that's interesting for some people.
Sure. Usually we're typing away and we write a note with a very long title. And of course, some people's note titles are pasted from other documents, or they expected them to be short, but then the lecturer qualifies what they were about to say, and you end up with an embarrassingly long link title, or one that actually encompasses two notes. So you go in, you edit it, you move the cursor back a ways, maybe insert something. And if we hit return here, where the insertion point is in the middle of a note, it splits the note into two notes. The existing text goes with the first note. It makes a new note that's the next sibling of the note that we just split. Now, if we edit this note and we go back to the very beginning and we hit the delete key, it decides, gee, this wasn't actually meaning to delete the note. It was meaning to join it with its elder sibling.
I've been looking for that. Okay, thanks. That's the one I really needed. Awesome.
I put a whole lot of links in the sidebar about that. Essentially, there are some slightly nuanced differences between map view and outline view, and probably common sense will enable you to work out where they might work in other views. But I think most of the time for this sort of thing, we tend to be working in. So I imagine it probably works in outline, works in chart, for instance. But I don't know who use chart as primary working view these days.
And Mr. Bernstein, can you share again? And this time show the new indenting, auto indenting, which I think many people will like. And then if you can at the time, also show for those that like me that are exclusively Markdown users, can you show the way to turn that off by adjusting the attributes?
Okay, let's.
Because if you're a Markdown user, the auto indenting drives you bananas. But if you're not, it's actually incredibly useful.
Okay. So you're thinking of quick lists where,
yes, exactly.
If we have some text and we wanted to export as a unordered list, we can express that intent to Tinderbox in a fairly comfortable way by either using asterisks or bullets. Bullet in the English keyboard is Option 8.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
And now Tinderbox automatically indents lists and sublists to make that a little bit clearer and nicer.
So a sublist is two asterisks or two bullets, and a list.
Yes.
And then if you wanted to disable that, can you pop up the indent attributes and show how to or disable and or adjust the number of characters for spacing? Or you could just use the inspector if you didn't want to use the displayed attributes.
Yes. So we have the amount that a list or sublist is indented relative to the left, it's the previous left margin, which is quick list indent. And the amount that, oh, I haven't had this happen yet. The amount that of space between the bullet and the text paragraph that follows, which is the quick list hanging indent.
I put links to the attributes in the chat. I just realized I need to cross-reference them to the article on quick lists, but it's all there.
Yeah, and to my point earlier, if you're writing in Markdown, if you just make those 0 and then reformat the table, then that kind of automation stops.
A case in point. So I know in your case you've gone through and sort of manually done that because that was getting around the problem at the time. Of course, if you put that in your Markdown preview, your Markdown prototype,
right,
then you don't have to do any further work.
Correct.
Because if you have a note set to a Markdown prototype or inheriting from a Markdown prototype, because don't overlook the fact that that prototype can inherit from another prototype.
Correct. And then if you don't mind me, do me a favor, Mr. Bernstein, if you can hit Command-1 and open up the inspector. And this might be a tip for people to see that. So if you click on the document inspector on the left, right there, and so if you click on systems and then do a search, if you were to then change, if you can change the default value for any system attribute in a document by changing that value there. So if you were to change that to like 36, that would then universally change for new notes using that default value in the future, and then you can reset that too. So that's kind of it. And so for me, when I start because I write exclusively in Markdown, I open up a new file and set that to 0, and then it it universally works across all my notes on the document.
So a note for the spike is actually the Markdown prototype.
Yeah.
But this is very new. This is this classic thing that it's not till all these things are settled in place. Right, yes, that would be useful to do this. Yes.
Well, and I create my own Markdown prototypes and my own Markdown templates, and that's where it gets different. So that I found that whole implementation really useful. So I wanted to make sure we pointed that out. Okay, and then Mr. Anderson, you had the link to ATB Ref showing everybody all the little other. Because there's a lot under the hood. It's not just these kind of bigger features in the views, but tons of like little performance tweaks that went into 10.
Yeah, it's in the forum, but I'll put it in. So that's in the. And the other thing is, for anyone who has who's bookmarked links to ATB Ref, you may find now they're turning up the banner at the top with a red thing saying it's old. The information's still fine. What I do is whenever a major change happens, I build a new baseline. I deliberately leave the old ones online. I republish the previous baseline with this banner. And if you click the link, it takes you to the index page for the current version. And the reason is that one of the things I'm quite careful to do, because this is all published as a static site, from time to time, I either need to rename articles or I need to rename or move things in the outline in the source Tinderbox. So it's probably the case, for instance, that if you have a bookmark for something in ATBRF 9.5 rather, if you just change in the URL 9.5 to 10, you probably will get the current page. It's just another way of getting back to where you are if you wanted to rebookmark it.
And why you talked about that too, if you don't mind, Mark, let's also bring up in your I don't want to call it a fix for your ATB ref, but the whole sitemap discussion we have, I think it's really interesting. The other reason why I want to bring that up, just so I can raise it to everyone, I won a grant last week from a company called Custom GPT, where I'm building a series of personal AI GPTs on their platform. And one of the utilities that you can that they do is you can upload a sitemap to the GPT, and it will index the site for you. So one of the exercises I'm going to do is to try to train this GPT on ATB ref and our Tinderbox lore and language to be able to see how good it is as teaching us Tinderbox. But Mr. Anderson found some interesting, as he was updating ATB ref for Tinderbox 10, he found some interesting breakage in his sitemap management.
Well, thanks for letting me share my shame in public, because basically how this started was I discovered to my horror that for about 4 or 5 years, Google had been studiously ignoring the XML sitemap I had carefully created that's supposed to help Google index my stuff, because it turned out that I put something into it that had, so I'm doing 2 things at once. Just open up ATB ref 10 and share this, share. Okay, so unseen by most of you, in the root of,
and by the way, anybody learning Tinderbox, if you, at the bottom of ATB ref, you can download the entire ATB ref as a Tinderbox. And that is actually a really fun thing to kind of crawl through and look at all the code and all of the templates to kind of be learning Tinderbox. So it's actually a really valuable utility.
And I'm only, standing on the shoulders of others. I mean, indeed, the entire thing was built off so good, that's being shown. So I can go to ATB ref 10. So as you can see, these are all the old sites, and I still keep them. So maintain them. Right. So there's an XML file. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you read XML or not. It's just a load of code. But it turns out that there is a site.
And by the way, to pause you real quick, that load of code is read by Google to index the pages of sites.
But I have a page that has this name. Now, in the browser, it's showing up with a %3c, which c equals, basically that's being turned into a code. But what I discovered, and I want to stress that this is the kind of thing. One of the things, oh, it's a bug. No, it's not a bug. It's actually one of those things that you just discover that it's entirely accidental. That who knew? So I had, where I was exporting, but one of the things that this XML asks you to do is to give you the URL of each page. The bit that I've got highlighted on screen at the moment used to say caret path caret. Give me the HTML exported path, but as for reasons elsewhere, Tinderbox has become more flexible in the number of characters that which characters you can put in a URL. There is absolutely no reason you can't put a less than symbol in a URL. Who cares? It works. Why bother? Except that it transpires that for the unwary, what is not apparent is that this is an illegal character in. So I got the right thing. No, I haven't. This is a illegal character in XML, and I'm sorry for the alphabet soup. It's this. What am I attributing code? I'm looking for attribute encode. All the characters you see on screen, left angle bracket, right angle bracket, for XML to work, have to be encoded. Otherwise, XML has a hissy fit. It's just so wired into the thing. It's just one of those things we all have to accept. It happens.
And what do you mean when you say encode? What does that mean?
Sorry. So in other words, if you literally want to put a left angle bracket into the content of an XML element. So my apologies. So another way people might be more familiar with HTML. So let's say you have a paragraph. You got open bracket, open angle bracket P, close angle bracket, text. If you want to put a left angle bracket in that text, indeed in HTML, you have to encode it like that. There you can use the ASCII code number, but essentially this will do. And XML has similar limitations. So the problem I found was that, what I needed to do was I needed to get the path XML encoded. Well, we don't have an XML encode thing, but we do have attribute encode that essentially does this thing for us. And this came about because when around the time version 5 massively opened up what we could do, and one of the things that people started doing was doing the sort of caret value. Sorry, so I'm not looking sideways. Zoom always moves us on the wrong screen. Right, now I'm now hopefully looking at you. What was it? Attribute encode. Yes. So when you're exporting stuff, you need to encode this, and you can do this in action code. You can't do it in export code. So my next attempt was I did this, but I put $path inside, and the app went away and thought for a very, very long time. And I think it would have got there eventually, but I suspect under the hood I was asking it to do an unfeasible amount of transforms. And Mother Nature was telling me this was the wrong solution. So kudos to Mark, who very kindly said, okay, well, no, use the existing HTML export path, which is there for this very purpose, where you want the equivalent of caret path, but it's not hard coded, and it's normally generated on the fly when you export. But if you want to know what it is before you've exported, that's what this is there for. And it works a treat, and put that back in, and the export to XML is blazingly fast again. I mean, on my M1 Pro, I was staggered. I really was impressed in the sense that I went to export ATB Ref 10 and it was done by the time I thought to look up and say, I better start stopwatch and see how it is. I mean, I know, times move, equipment's more powerful and all this sort of thing, but kudos to Mark. It is marvelous. The file you're looking at is, I think it exports about 2,500 notes, HTML pages that make up the site that you see in ATB Ref. And some of it is non-trivial. So things like the sitemap is a list of every single note. So it exports all the notes, and there has to make a note that is all the notes. So there's a ton of work goes on. So anyway, that's very nice. Does that cover it for you, Michael?
Yeah, it does. But I just wanted to point out that people could see these details in ATB Ref. They see the value of it, and they can really kind of just dig in there and play around with it. Oh,
absolutely. And the whole point, I mean, genuinely, you can see there are a load of templates in here. So for instance, if you want to know how to do an Atom RDF feed, you want to do an RSS RDF feed, or you want to do a JSON feed, there are templates in here. And the whole idea, the reason they're in here is so you can download the file and steal all the code. Because heaven forbid you actually have to work it out for yourself, because it's just not fun to do. And in these, I've actually colored the content. So the orange stuff is what you would want if you basically copied this template. That's the stuff that you would want to customize for your own use.
Cool. All right, well, thanks for that. Okay. So that is Tinderbox 10 in a nutshell. There's a ton went into it, and the application overall is just performing so much faster. Fewer crashes, fewer hangups, a lot more performance, new views. I mean, it's just a ton that's gone into it. So thank you for that, Mark. Any other comments, questions, thoughts, ideas that people have on their projects? Otherwise, I'd love to jump in and see if the community can help me think through a series of explode operations I've been trying to do and optimize them a bit more. If anybody has anything else to talk about, we can do that first. Otherwise, I want to jump into that. Anyone? Good? All right, gone. Okay, so I am going to take the, open up my document here and show you what's going on. Okay, so I can just share my desktop now. Great. All right, so has everyone seen my Tinderbox file? Good. All right. So Mary and I are working on updating version 11 of our textbook, and we are developing a whole series of methods to co-author and collaborate as two authors working in Tinderbox to co-author a book together. So there's going to be a lot of learnings that come out of the collaboration process that's on this as well. And what's super fun too is you've got me on one end, which is the kind of extreme bowels of knowing things about Tinderbox, and Mary on the other end, who's just getting started. And I basically forced her to come into this process. And so it's been really fun to kind of have the two ends of the expertise of Tinderbox getting involved in this project. So let me open up a Word file and I'll show you one of the challenges that we had. So one of the challenges we have is we have all of these Word files and different documents that we previously created for the book, and they're scattered everywhere. And one of the objectives that we're trying to do with the book is to get all of the content in one place so that we can then start creating, glossaries and indexes and linking learning objectives, and just get a really solid assessment of what's in the book and where is all the material and why does it matter. And so part of the exercise I've been trying to do is like, how do we get all of the content into the book? While I'm at it, I just want to cater to David Eddy's comment earlier of what we were discussing last week. One of the things that we were talking about last week was the transformation process of going from a Word document and getting content into Tinderbox. So this one is particularly easy because there's no headings or no styles or anything of that nature. So I can just copy the content in Word, and then I can come over to Tinderbox. And so I've got a test note here that I'll play with, and I'll just get the staff out of here so we're not as distracted. And so I can just simply paste that content into the file, and that works. I can also just paste it as unformatted text. And that's a kind of a quick way to get content into Tinderbox. One other thing I might show is if we go back to the Word file, and let's say there were some headings in this document, like heading 1, and then we'll put some text. And then we'll go heading 2, and then we'll put some text. All right, so let's say we had this, and I'm going to format this now as headings in Word. So one thing, and this is what caters to what I was referring to with David Eddy earlier, in that if I now copy this text in Tinderbox, I figured out last week this kind of transformation methodology where I can use Obsidian, and I don't know how Obsidian does it. It's one of those automagical things that just happen out there in the world. But if I paste a Word file into Obsidian, Word file automatically, because Obsidian is primarily a Markdown document. So what Obsidian will do, sorry, I'm trying to, yeah, come on. Okay, what Obsidian will do is I gotta move some things out of the way here. It will take that Word document and grab the word headings and convert them to Markdown. So you'll see here, and if I look at the Obsidian document in its source mode, you'll see Obsidian will toss in the hashtags, which is Markdown syntax for a heading 1 and a heading 2. And it will also drop in the numbering scheme for numbered indents. And so now if I do that, I can copy that, come over to Tinderbox and paste that in. And so now I've got the Markdown language. So if you write in Markdown, that's how you can easily bring a Word doc, a rich text formatted Word document, convert it to Markdown, and bring that back into Tinderbox. And then once you've done that, you then can do any kind of text transformations or pattern matching around that. And one of the things that we learned last week, for example, is if I now go and do explode, oops, let's say I'm going to hit my explode text ups. I must have messed this up. So if I go to note explode, And if I now want to explode at the Markdown markers, I can go ahead and hit caret, start at the beginning of the line with regex, go to the first hashtag and space and explode at that. And then that will explode the document and give me that first heading and everything else. If I then wanted to further explode the document, I could hit explode. Whoops, my hotkeys aren't playing with me here. If I go to explode, I can then add another hashtag, space, and then have Tinderbox explode that one at the heading 2s. So it's just a really kind of fun way to be able to manipulate and manage your document. But that's not what I wanted to talk about for this particular exercise. So so let's pause right there just to demonstrate what we showed and slow it down. What we just talked about is like, how do you take a rich formatted Word document and get it into Tinderbox? And if you just want to, and then one other thing I'll show you here, which I found incredibly valuable as Mary and I were going through this. Let's say we have, let me go to my notes I've been taking in our meeting today. Let's say you had, let's do it this way. Oops. Let's say you had www.eastgate.com. Let's say I had this URL in my Word document. If I were just to copy this text and bring it over to Tinderbox, which is totally valuable to do or viable to do. All right, Tinderbox unexploited really quit for some reason. That's fine. Happens. Get this out of
back
the way.
in 9 though.
Yeah. All right. Get you guys out of the way. Tinderbox is here. So if I hit a new note. All right, and then I paste that text in. You see I can paste in my text and the URLs are there, and that all works. But let's say I don't want that URL embedded within the text, and I actually want to find a quick way to be able to get in. And what was interesting with Mary in our document, in a particular Word file, we may have had 60 or 70 different URLs. So going, manually going in here, editing the, hitting edit to go find and get the value of that URL would have been really painful. So what we found was in this process is we could go to Obsidian, paste in the content, and by pasting in that content, Obsidian would automatically separate that URL into a Markdown syntax for that URL. So if I were to view Obsidian, so like this, there's the URL, and good to go. So now I can copy that content, come back to Tinderbox, and paste that content into Tinderbox. And now I have that URL encoded in the Markdown syntax for within Tinderbox. And then if I go ahead and apply, let me do it, wrong note. Let me do it in this test note here. If I do it like that, I've now got that. And if I format using my Markdown template, like we were talking about earlier, okay, so this is now formatted in my Markdown template. And if I preview that, that previews actually as a hypertext URL. And if I go look at the text, you'll see it's a properly encoded URL. So this is just a kind of a really cool way of, getting your content from Word into Tinderbox. And if you need to have some of these text transformations, I found Obsidian to be a really cool mediation utility for that process. So let me pause there. Any comments, questions, thoughts, ideas, reactions to those steps? No. Okay. So now let me go to the conundrum questions, challenges I've been having. So let's say we have these series of, we have these series of questions in a Tinderbox file, and I'm wanting to explode. Come on. I don't know what's going on here with this file.
Well, right, Michael, you have two different versions of Tinderbox open at the same time.
That could be what's going on.
That if you end up having the same document open in both versions, they get very unhappy. All right, I really hadn't thought that anyone else would ever be likely to do that. It happens to me fairly often.
Yeah. It's, well, as we said earlier, as Mark said in the very beginning of the call, there are then the muggles out there in the world that will take whatever magical tool you've done and then use it our way and in unexpected ways. So let's go ahead and open them.
First thing I did when I downloaded version 10 was delete version 9.
Yeah. Okay, so so now what we want to do is we want to explode this note. And here's my goal. I want to explode the note at every one of the questions. So I get an individual note at every one of the individual questions. I then want to have the answers exploded under those individual questions, and then have the little asterisk be the true, marked out as the true answer. And so let me stop sharing screen real quick because I got to look something up because I can't remember the information here. Let's see, where was it? I know I had these notes somewhere. Scratchpad. Or maybe.
Do you want to break on a number?
Yeah, tell me, remind me how to break the number.
/D plus, because you might be
right.
digits.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's just I forgot the regex for that. So let me reshare and we can do it in real time together. Okay, so the first explode that I want to do is relatively simple. Is I just go to note, I hit explode, and then if I break in a delimiter, and I can do /D plus. And what that will do is it will, this is just saying, and I can, if I wanted to, start at the beginning of the line and find anything that starts with a number and a plus. And then if I wanted to, I could put a period there and a space just to be really explicit.
Actually, if you put a period and an asterisk, because a period is not a period, it's any character.
Yeah,
so you'll
like that.
That will get you the rest of your line. Yeah.
Right.
It does exactly what you tell it to do.
Right. So yeah, so here's the distinction too. If I do period asterisk, that gives me the entire line. But if I want an explicit period, I put the escape key in, and I'm telling it, grab me any number of one or more digits with a period, and then a.
Then you want a period asterisk because you actually want an any. You want an any symbol. You only want one period.
Yeah. Or if I do this, give me a period and a space. So that's giving me essentially. If I do it like that, that will.
It splits on that. Yeah.
So if I do that, that will give me the 11 questions that we have in the note. So if I now hit explode, I now have all 11 of the individual questions. So now the next thing I wanted to do was to run an operation that would explode, and then look, and it left the question in here. So let's go. And the great thing about Tinderbox is you can refine this as you want to do it. So if I hit explode again. And if I then can hit explode and say remove from text. So now when I do it, you'll see that I've exploded the question and it removed the explode line out of the text. So now I'm left with the question and the two answers to the question. Now what we want to do is explode this again, and this time do it at the letters. And what I want to do is capture the oops, keep doing that. My hotkey is done. So if I now want to do is if I now explode at the and this time I'm going to explode at the paragraph marks, because I want to have, if you think each one of these is a row, a line, and then so I just want to grab the paragraph marks of these. So now if I explode at the paragraph marks, so if I hit note explode, and I'll show you my challenge.
You want first paragraph.
First paragraph. So, and let's just show the demonstration of what happens. If I hit first sentence and I hit explode, what you'll see happening is Tinderbox is looking for the first sentence, and the sentence ends in a period. And so Tinderbox is thinking that, well, the end of the sentence is at this period. So that's not what I want. So we'll go ahead and delete that. And if I hit explode again, and I select first paragraph, now the first paragraph is all the way up to the /n line break. And if I do that, I now have the two notes of the two character options. And so now what I've been wanting to do is I now want to have these these notes automatically moved, and I'll just manually do it to show you what I want. I want these notes automatically moved up to here. I want the name changed to their option, like true, like this. I want their prototype put to the question answer, and the one that had the asterisk, I want that checked. So then, and then I want that deleted. So that way I have the question, and then I can clean that chat up later. So that way I have the question, I have the question's answers, and I know which answer to the question is correct. So that's ultimately what we wanted to do. And let me show you then how we went about doing that. And since I deleted those answers in that thing, I got to undo a little bit so I get this back here. So if I delete that, so the steps I'm having to go through right now is I go and I hit explode at the paragraph, at the line marks, and I get my 2 answers. Then Mr. Anderson and I were playing with different stamps on how to manage the next step. And here are my different stamps. So here's the stamp that we wrote that basically says, on the selected note, create a list, collect all of the descendants whose prototype is not exploded notes. So when you explode a Tinderbox note, Tinderbox automatically creates a note called exploded notes and gives it the prototype exploded notes. So I want to capture everything as the descendants of this note that's not the prototype of exploded notes and get the ID. And I then want you to cycle through that list that gets created, apply the prototype P question answer to that question, and then give it its container. And this is where the logic in my head is still struggling around that, to the parent. And the challenge I have with this is, for me, when you explode the note, I'm thinking that this is the grandparent, not the parent, but I want to come back to that in just a minute. And then once you're done with that, create another list, collect the children's whose prototype is the exploded note, and then I want you to delete that note. So now if I apply this stamp to the note, you'll see that what happens, if I did it right, I didn't do it right. Why didn't it work? Why didn't it work, Mr. Anderson? It was working? It explode like that.
Have you got the right prototypes in?
I might have screwed the prototypes up. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the prototypes aren't getting assigned properly. So let me just manually do that right now.
You may be missing the prototype.
Yeah, so I just manually did it. Oh, you know what? P question answer. And I have the prototype P question answer. So they're spelled properly. So that should work. And then if I apply this stamp to this note, what's going on? It was working yesterday.
Actually, top tip at this point is if you're using a prototype, give it a something visible, a color, a badge, something, because that way you can instantly tell if it's been applied or not. If it's only doing something like setting the displayed attributes, I have fallen into this rabbit hole before.
Let's give it a bird.
I would also suggest that the second part of this, which is deleting the container, is preventing us from seeing the effect of the first part of this.
Right. So
because it's deleting the container and its contents. And
right. So it was working yesterday. I don't know what it did. So let's comment this out for now. And so what we're seeing right now is, for whatever reason, when I'm exploding, okay, now if I go ahead here and I apply this, it's deleting. I know what's happening. It's deleting. It's not deleting the notes. It's moving them somewhere else than I expect. So somehow they're getting moved somewhere else. True. In the name of the note, true. Yeah. So essentially, I'm trying to figure out and how to get it to audit. And maybe it's this one.
Yes, I confused. This was all working.
It was all working yesterday, which is really, it was like working last night, which is interesting. And now I'm curious because it was working in Tinderbox 9 last night. So
I doubt that that's an issue, but I'm not happy with moving something to the container of its parent, which is where it already is. And I'm wondering what an item is actually being bound to here.
Yeah, let me just try this real quick. I'm going to do this. Open. Okay. All right.
So the meta part here is that we've done the explode. We now want the children of the exploded notes container to be the children, and we want to say goodbye to, whether we move it or delete it. We want done with the exploded notes.
Right.
This is something I would say to people when you are developing a process with explode, do this at the very end. So once you know that the explode is working as you want, and only then do you want to start doing additional coloring.
Right. Now if I do this, this is the explode answers. That is so weird. It was so working last night. I don't understand. Okay, we may need to punt this till later until I can get it working. But that is just bizarre. But the other thing I wanted to be able to do too, which I couldn't figure out, was how can I actually get it to be able to apply it to a stamp? So I don't want to have to explode and then apply it. What I really wanted to be able to do is have it explode and then have it apply the stamp here, so I can have the operations happening all at once.
So there's a backstory here that I think you've missed out. Is really what you want to be able to do is to, because you can't. Sorry, I see Chuck has his hand up. Because you want to be able to reuse this code, and you can't save and explode. What you're trying to do is, in a sense, is to create a savable explode using a stamp. I just mentioned that for Mark's benefit, and I see Chuck has his hand up.
Yeah, go for it, Chuck.
All right, so my first observation is explode is a very useful tool until you try to do something that gets too complicated for it. And I have to deal with the work I've been doing. I've been having to deal with complex explodes. So for example, I was just dealing with a situation where I get to make it real, I get a charge history from my EV charger. Not that I own an EV, but my son does. So I get a comma delimited text file. I want to turn that into a series of notes where I've taken a bunch of parameters that are start times and kilowatt hours and things like that, and turn it into a series of notes. I want to explode it. Well, that's beyond what explode can do. And in fact, the regex to just break that apart is a fairly long, complex piece of regex, and it still doesn't do everything I want in terms of assigning things out. So I wrote a stamp which does the explode. So I just go through and take each paragraph in the imported text file, which is in a single note, and create all the subnotes that I want with the appropriate attributes, all defined correctly based on the original text plus some calculations. And that kind of thing can be done probably easier than trying to do multiple iterations of the explode operation and then trying to run stamps on those as a follow-up. Now, what you're doing might be the easy way to learn how to do what you want in terms of building an action code that will do the entire process in one step. But still, I think you're in a sense making the job more difficult by trying to do explodes, which then give you a construct which is not what you really wanted. If you created action code which created what you wanted in the first place, I think you'd have fewer problems. That's my suggestion.
Well, yes and no. I mean, because my issue, I am trying to create action code that I'm trying to do in the first place, and the challenge is it would be fine if there was just 11 questions. The challenge is I have 150 of these, and there's, and I want to automate it, and so that we can get some consistency in all of that. Let me show you one other thing though, and this is where my question really breaks down. Then Mr. Bernstein, you can comment. So I went ahead and commented out the container move part, and so if and this will demonstrate what I really am trying to have happen. If I hit exploded paragraph, so and then I apply the stamp. So the stamp is actually working in this context, but now what I really want to have happen is I want to figure out, how do I tell Tinderbox to find basically this container and move these two above explode. And that's what I'm struggling doing. And what I really would like to be able to do is do it from here. So I can actually, let's see if it works right now. So if I go, actually, here's the stamp get answers. So if I were to say stamp get answers, that's what I really want to be able to do, because I only want to have to click the button once. On each question, I want to be able to go like that and have it, and so, and this is what doesn't make sense to me. Why when I say get answers is this stamp not being applied to that note, which was just exploded. So, okay, Mr. Bernstein, you had your hand up.
First, a stamp is applied with this bound to whatever note is selected, or if several notes are selected, to each of those notes in turn. So for this is bound to exploded notes at this moment. But if you look at your first loop, you are taking, you're looping through all of the children of the note that you exploded by intention, skipping the container exploded notes. You're just this is actually not what you think it is, and actually logging or showing the name of this or dollar name is a useful diagnostic for that. But if we step back for a minute, what we really want to do here is take a note and break it up into a bunch of subnotes. And we're going to need to do this a lot. And the notes have a fairly simple structure. And one way to imagine this is get the next line or paragraph. Does it start with a number followed by a period? If so, we're going to treat it as a question, going to make a note with this as a title. And we're going to remember that note. We'll call that the current note. Okay.
Yeah.
Does it start with a letter followed by a period? Then this is a response to the current question. We will make a note, put the line we have into that note's title, and make it a child of the current note. Make it the youngest child of the current note, or we'll invert the order.
Yeah.
And finally, if it doesn't begin with a letter followed by a period or some digits followed by a period, it might be empty, in which case we're just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
Or it might be something else, in which case I suppose you just want to export it as a note.
Got it. So instead of using what you're saying is, instead of using the explode function, use the streaming parser.
Yeah.
And go line by line, and that would make much more reliable process.
I think in this case, you are, the explode is supposed to be more convenient than the streaming parser, but you're doing enough work that it's not actually saving you anything.
Right. It's not.
Just one quick one is that when you look for does it start with a letter, you're actually looking for does it start with 0 more asterisks.
Yes.
No. Yeah, zero or more asked is good
but
point.
just before your correct answer gets zoned out.
Okay. So develop, and if I remember, remember a while back I built that task parsing stream code where I was pulling tasks out of a notes content. So that streaming code is essentially the exact operation.
Well, also, Michael, when we spoke this week, when we were looking at actually pulling out finding URLs, because you did that other thing, that term extraction thing, again, I think one of the useful things to bear in mind about that I think came out from going through that with you is that when you're using the stream parser, the temptation is to say variable or attribute equals text, skip, contain whatever. Actually, you don't want to do that, because really what you're saying is just take the text, go to this, and the whole point of the stream parsing controls is say, right, I found this, put it here, and now as a post 9.5, but you can now send that to either an attribute or a variable. The variables can be useful because often what you get isn't quite what you want to store. So the variable is useful because you may be able to put in a variable, do whatever transform you need to do before putting it in the attribute where it's going to live full time.
Okay. So we have about 12 minutes left. Do we want to experiment with just getting the question? Like just play with it? So if we have, and I create in good Tinderbox fashion, I created a duplicate because invariably we will nuke the text at some point as we experiment. So you want to create a backup. And so stream parse question, and then what do? We say if text, I don't remember the parsing syntax.
$text each line.
$text dot each line. There it is. Okay. And then I'm looking for a pattern, right? So then
first you've got to say what you're going to call the line. So each line, line or X or whatever.
Yeah. All right. Or a line. Make it clear. All right. So so this is saying we're going to evaluate each line and we're going to be looking for a pattern. So then we say, like, if would it be text or no, a line that I contains this pattern, which we just said was this, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but you might have 100 questions. So you want you want D plus.
Yeah. So that's looking for the line that's a question. And then what we're saying, if the text contains that, what that's going to do is that's going to give me that entire line. And we actually want the whole line, not just the number. And that's going to drop it into a $1. Correct. And so then if I do this,
the whole line is a line. So $1 is what's being found in it. So you basically want to use a line to now make a new note. So you're going to create a note that's going to be the child of this note.
I got so a line is the whole line.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So I don't want to do this yet. Right. So this
that's okay.
No, you did. You just wanted inside the if. Okay, you said, right, I found a question. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create the note for that question.
All right, so let's do that. Let me rewrite that again. So a line contains beginning, number, plus period, quote, there. Okay. So if we find a line that contains that, then what we want to do is we want to create a note. Correct?
Yep.
And we want to create a note as a child of this one just for fun. So we need the path of the current this note. Would that be correct? Because we need to tell it where we want the note to be.
Single argument create will do what you want.
Oh, got it. Okay. So if I then say create a line. Or create a line or create $1.
No, a line. You want the
a line
title to be the question including the number,
Right.
not the number alone.
So if we do that and we hit apply, that doesn't seem to do it. Oh, it did it. Look at that. Let's do it on this one. No, it didn't. If I hit apply to test now, that did not seem to do it.
Well, try show a line.
Try what? I'm sorry.
Show.
Oh, show a line. There we go. Oh, nice. Show a line. Yeah, and so that's the line. So that is correct. So it's showing. Oh, show's fun. Look at that. I've never used that properly. So that's telling us it is finding every one of the questions. So the question is, why is it not creating it where we expect it to be created?
Okay. Copy the return value of create to a string variable.
I'm sorry.
Show that.
So what do you mean? Put it in my string, like this?
Sure.
And then we want to say my string equals a line. And the expectation is the 11th.
My string equals create a line.
Oh, create a line. Like that?
That's right. Get rid of the other create, get rid of the other show.
Would that be correct? Try it like that. And I guess we don't need that right now.
And I would, at this point, show my string.
Oh, and then, okay.
No, after you've set it.
Yeah. Okay.
So we are creating top level notes.
Right, but they're not showing up somewhere. Where are they getting created? That's the question. Or why are they not getting created?
Well,
I wonder if it's because they already exist.
Maybe, but where would they exist? Because we're at the top level of the file and they're not children here.
So let's make the container explicit.
Okay,
Create a second argument, the name or path of the container.
So
which
no, it's the first one. It goes before that.
It's the first one. Thank you.
Yeah, so I go like this, answers. Would that be right?
I believe
that'd be fine for now.
Plus.
Yeah.
And then do I put a backslash there too?
No.
If I do, no. Oops, and I quote test and then answer. No. Interesting. Yeah, so it thinks it's creating it in that path, and it's not. Oh, there it is. There you go. Yeah, so we just created all 11 questions.
My hunch is this is probably an unexpected edge case due to unintentionally creating things at root.
At the root, yes, that could be. Okay, so that's figured. So we created that, and then the next step would be to do a similar parsing that says now if you are and then we can actually park this value as a what would the next step be? We parse this value as a variable.
Yeah,
it's in my string. You've already got it.
Yeah, we've already got it. It's in my string as a variable, right? And then we want to say if you're starting with a letter, grab that line. So we do a similar cycle here. We can basically grab that. And now we want to do, Now we want to change the pattern, and we're looking for not a number, but a letter.
Well, no, you only want to do this if the last thing was my string. So in other words, if my string has a value,
right?
You might want, actually, I think you might want to send another boolean, because what you need to know is, did the last thing that happened, because you're reading the whole note, you're reading the whole note. You need to know that not only have I found a question, but it's sort of still a question.
It actually is a question. So we set a
it is a question, because you want to know when you've rolled into a new question.
So v question. So we've got a variable called v question, and if a line matches somehow true. I'm
watching Chuck at this point.
Yeah,
because we decided this was easier than the regular.
Mark Anderson's warning is good, but I find that when one is writing parsers for one's own data, it makes sense to begin with the optimistic view that the data is correctly structured.
Correct, and I know for a fact this is
deal because most of the time it's going to be mostly okay, and especially for something like this where we're doing 100 of these, we're not doing 10 million.
Right.
So I would defer the check to make sure you have a current question. And I'd get rid of, while you're there, get rid of the diagnostic show.
Okay. All right. So we know this creates questions.
I meant the show my string.
Got it. So we know this creates questions.
So I would optimistically say that if it starts with a letter, which we need to actually say what a letter character is.
What is that, a W? I can't remember.
I think W is right.
Yeah. Then we want to now create a
inside of my string. Instead of answers, we want to create it as child of the value of my string.
Right. And so
not in quotes.
Inside?
No, just my string.
On my string. Okay. Okay. So we're thinking that should work.
Could the blank lines that appear to be in the source material be part of what's confusing things?
Well, we should be skipping them at present because neither of those regular expressions will be satisfied by a blank line, I think.
Okay.
Look at that.
Okay, notice we didn't get the true note because it doesn't start with a letter. It starts with an asterisk.
Correct. Not in all cases, but yeah. And that's interesting.
Right, we're skipping the correct answers, but we can pick the correct answers up with another regular expression or by making this regular expression slightly more permissive.
Correct. And also, if you look here, like question 3, though, it's the my string is getting additive. And so you're actually getting, rather than an ABC all underneath.
Oh, yes, because we've changed my string. We don't want to do that.
Right. Okay.
So we need to either have a local variable or a different string attribute. Yes. But you can see in the second one, it changes my string. And that's not actually what we meant to do.
Correct. So we want a different new variable. So we go here, like, I don't know, v string, the answer. So that would be the variable we want, correct? And so we do that.
Why are you creating answers under answers?
Well, that's because we were adding.
Well, what I'm getting at is you kept. I don't think you want to do.
No, I don't want to create answers under answers. What I want is this, right? That,
You don't, my point is you don't need the V answer string.
That's what I want.
Variable.
Right. Okay. So I just go like this, and I actually don't just do that.
Correct.
Yeah, that would make more sense. And I actually, in this context, I wouldn't need this anymore either. We just did the my string for testing earlier anyway.
No, we do need that.
No, you do need that.
Why?
Because you've got to remember where to store the answers. My string contains the current question.
Got it. Right. You're right. Okay. So now if we go like this and do it again. And there you go.
Yep.
Almost, except you've got an extra child, but that's.
Yeah, but we'll figure that out. But you're right. This is a lot easier than explode.
Right.
And this is why is it? And again, it's curious. It's adding in each case, it's adding the original question as one of the first answers. And is that a byproduct of this exercise here?
Oh,
because we're not clearing my string.
Because we want well, I think what's happening is it's the backslash W because the number still qualifies. So you basically want a not number.
No, actually, if you look, consider the questions. Okay, A line does contain numbers, and so we make an answer. And we remember it in my string. Now we ask now we go right ahead, which we don't want to do. And we say, does A line contain at least one letter followed by other stuff? Well, all the questions do contain a letter.
Yes.
We aren't saying, does it begin with? It just has to contain it. So for the questions, we make a question container, and then we treat the question as an answer.
Yes.
And so we probably want to say either begins with, I forget, Mark Anderson begins with.
It's a literal string. No, you can't use a regex.
No,
so begins and ends with a literal.
So here we just want to put in a caret as the first, as a start of expression anchor in the regular expression.
But don't we have a caret already here? Maybe I'm missing something.
But isn't a digit valid as for backslash W? Is my guess.
Or would we want to say
I'm waiting for someone who's an expert at regex to step forward and say yes.
Well, so square bracket A to Z.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that.
Get rid of the slash.
Yes, as long as all your answers start with lowercase letters.
Well, they do in this case.
That's fine. When we're good, we're good. So as I say, it does exactly what you say.
Right. All right. So now we got rid of the question, and then the question is, how do we capture the asterisks?
Because you haven't allowed, when you said, does it start with A to Z, you wanted before the bracket, before the square bracket, you want to put backslash asterisk asterisk, because you want 0 or more asterisks.
Yeah.
At the start.
Like or not, like some have.
Yeah, no, the first asterisk is a literal. So backslash asterisk says I want an asterisk. Sorry, an asterisk, because regex says in the second one means 0 or more. Because
what do you mean the second one?
Type another asterisk.
Oh yeah, got it.
I know it's counterintuitive, but it's regex.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah. Okay. And then is that going to? And will that only capture lines with asterisks, or will it capture lines with asterisks?
No, because So the second asterisk is the regex command that says the thing before I want 0 or more times. So it'll take a line that has no asterisk and a line that has an asterisk.
Look at that. All right. And then if we've done that, now that we've got the create. Does create a variable of the name? Because now I want to make something.
It does, yes. So if you set something equals create, what you get back is the path of the note you created.
So if I now do this and I say variable string the answer, and then I say
v answer equals create.
V answer equals create, and I say v
answer name parentheses the answer.
Yeah, that's right. Name the answer. So the name of this. No, how do I make that? I'm sorry, I'm on mind blanking here. I want the prototype. I want the prototype of this. No, oh, I know what I want to do. I want to say $prototype. How do I assign the prototype P questions to the answer? So I would say,
is it to all of them, or only is it to all these, or is it to any one? Right. So it's $prototype the answer.
Prototype the answer. So if I do that,
equals whatever you want it to be.
Equals
yeah, P. What was the prototype? That's right. Sorry, I'm mind blanking. I'm getting stage fright here. So if I go like this.
Yeah.
All right. So now if we do that, we can delete these. Go like that. Cool. And now they've got the right prototype. And so then I can just incrementally start adding additional operations like pull out the asterisk, change the name, make this correct, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
That is
so much more at all.
That is so much more efficient than Explode. A gazillion hundred times.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'll just point out that in my own work, I've done some incredibly complex Explode operations on massive amounts of text. And if you approach it incrementally, dealing with each aspect of the problem that you're trying to parse, working with action code will get you there and will allow you to do some pretty amazing conversions of, rather bizarre stuff into organized notes.
Well, and I think what I like about this is you can use the Explode operation to kind of figure out what you want and kind of do it the first time and then figure it out, or figure out what you want and then
Explode is extremely handy for something simple, and it's extremely handy for experimentation. But if you're doing anything that goes beyond what the Explode dialog box will support, start thinking in terms of action code.
Action code. Yeah, and what did that take us? It literally took us what, 19 minutes? 20 minutes, and now I'll be able to apply this to literally. I've got another couple hundred questions behind the scenes that I now can go up, pull in here, apply, and be done in less than an hour.
And the other rider on this for sort of later listeners is just circling back to the point that this is working because you have highly structured data.
Yes.
So if you had a whole melange of things inside your actual questions, this would not be so easy. But again, as we worked on just this week with you on the using the text stream parsing, you can do a lot as long as there's a structure you can find. That's an awful lot you can do. And I mean, this is the thing I just find so amazingly powerful about this, because this is not the kind of thing that I'm sure you could sit down and choose your computer language. You could probably do this, but actually doing this outside that without having to sit in a coding IDE, being able to look at sitting in the context of the text. I stress the text you're working with, knowing what you want to do. I find this incredibly useful.
Oh, I know it. So by the way, for those that are listening, what Mark is referring to, we're out of time today, but let me just show you what I was doing. So for my, I know I keep repeating myself, but I just finished my doctorate. So for my doctoral dissertation, let me show you here what I did. Is I wanted to kind of get the word out more about what I was doing. So on LinkedIn, I put out a post about my dissertation. It's gotten about almost 18,000 impressions so far. And what I wanted to do was to figure out, who are the big players in the field. So what I ended up doing was I wanted to quickly get kind of these names. And in my dissertation, I had a list of companies. And so what I did is I went and said, hey, ChatGPT, can you go find me, and it wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. Can you go find me the founders of all of these companies and initiatives and build me a table? And I went back and forth with it until finally ChatGPT started spitting out a list of what it believed to be the founders of the companies plus their LinkedIn URLs. I was then able to, using the transformations that I was showing you earlier, and I'll just do it real quick. Scroll down, and just do one. Grab, copy that, pop over to Obsidian, grab a scratch pad note, highlight and delete, paste that. Now Obsidian now has created a Markdown table for me. And again, if I go view it in its source, you can see that I've now got a fancy Markdown table. So now I can just copy all of that, come over to Tinderbox. And then if I hit blah, 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 test, paste that in, I now have the Markdown table associated with all of the these founders and such. And then using the stream parsing function, we were able to go in and we have a very discrete pattern. Here's the company's name, and then here are the founders, and then here are their LinkedIn URLs as best guessed by ChatGPT. And so we use Stream Parser to pull out these names, which resulted in, and I can go ahead and show you this dissertation, doctorate 2023 folder, which resulted in, where is my dissertation folder? Let me find it.
This is the school of, I only had to do this once, watching this list scrolling past.
Yeah. Let me find my TBX dissertation here. And I'll show you, and I'll show you the output of this, which was really cool. Dissertation.
While Michael's doing that, an interesting thing we discovered, Mark, which, and again, this is not said as a critique. So an odd, and I'm sure it's an odd, weird edge case thing. We were trying to find the first link, which started with a square bracket. And it turned out we couldn't find that. So when we changed the square bracket, we changed them into something else, and then it all worked. So I'm assuming there was some level within levels of regex which didn't want to find a literal square bracket, open square bracket.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is, again, I mean, so I was helping Michael with this just a couple of days ago, and we were sort of thinking, oh, right, okay, that's odd. And I suddenly thought, well, no, let's just replace the square brackets with something else.
Right.
The top tip for future listeners is when you're replacing brackets, remember to use a different character for the opening bracket and the closing bracket.
Right.
Otherwise, fun will end.
Yes.
Right.
Because you're going to change it back
quick
again.
Word while Michael is hunting. This week I'm pointing the car south, and we're heading to the far end of US Route 1 from Boston to Key West. So I may miss the next couple of meetups. I will be on the forum, and I will be getting email at least some of the time. But long road trip, been a while.
Are you doing the actual Route 1? Because I remember as a kid that was a thing that people did, was actually took the original Route 1 all the way to Key West. Is that what you're doing?
Where we're actually going to go do some of Route 1 and some of the interstates, because time is limited, and especially this part of Route 1 is not necessarily as aesthetic as it used to be. But one of my colleagues during the pandemic was working for, I think, BMW Chicago, and had to get to the West Coast, and did historic Route 66 on the company dime, as it's not often the company will let you do Kerouac, but
Okay, so I found it, and then I'll let you all go.
Yay.
And then this is the other exercise we did, and I'll show you the end of the Julia Child cooking show, and later we can maybe start from the beginning. But essentially, I took all of this table that we created using the ChatGPT methodology. I then used my parsing functions that then allowed us to basically. What I did was, that's what I did. I used explode to explode every note at an initial row. So I would then have every individual row company. I was then able to parse it out and grab out of the notes the individual names. And so then at the end, I ended up with person's name, their entity, their LinkedIn URL, and their LinkedIn anchor tag. And so then I could just simply go through right here, and then I would just click on that and it would pop up that person. I could validate who they were. I then could grab their anchor tag. I was then able to do I don't think I did it now in this one. I was able to run grab all of their names. So if I just apply this to here, I now have all of the anchor tags for every one of those individuals. And then all I need to do is come here, go over to LinkedIn. And let's say I was going to pretend to create a new post in LinkedIn, paste that there. And now I can simply start finding those people, tagging them in my social media post, and hit send. And that whole
what a change from the days when you came home and said you have no messages on your answer phone.
So that whole process took to be able to identify about 100 people. Process took maybe an hour and a half. It was pretty cool. So from this list of companies, from this list of 50 people, give me the list of 150 people that are related to them with their LinkedIn URL, so I can create a social media post around them and try to drive engagement. The whole process was about an hour and a half. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We will see you later. Bye-bye.